It was a Wednesday afternoon, one of those quiet days where the house just feels still. I had the windows open, letting in the late spring air, and I was halfway through folding laundry when I heard a car pull up in the driveway. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I looked out the window, I saw my nephew, Ryan, stepping out of his car. He hadn't visited in months, maybe longer. He was dressed too neatly for a casual visit, pressed shirt, shiny shoes, and right away, I felt something off. "Hey, Aunt Carol," he called when I opened the door. He had that grin he always used when he wanted something. "Ryan," I said, smiling just enough. "Well, this is a surprise. Come in." He walked in like he owned the place, glancing at the pictures on the wall, the furniture, even the old grandfather clock that used to belong to my late husband. I watched him, trying to guess why he was here. He didn't ask about me, not once, just kept making small talk about the neighborhood, the size of the house, how cozy it was. After a few minutes, I asked, "So, what brings you by?" He hesitated, then said, "Just checking in. You've been living alone here for, what, 10 years now? Must get lonely?" I felt a little sting at that. "I manage just fine," I said. He nodded, looking around again. "Yeah, but, this house is a lot to take care of. Big place for one person. My mom and dad worry about you." There it was, the real reason. My brother Thomas had always been a little too interested in my house, the one my husband and I built from scratch before he passed. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Every wall, every tile, every memory. I said carefully, "Tell your parents I appreciate the concern, but I'm not planning to go anywhere." He looked at me then and something cold flashed behind his smile. "Sure, sure. I just think maybe it's time to start thinking ahead. You're getting older, Aunt Carol. Wouldn't it be easier to be somewhere smaller, near family?" That was his polite way of saying, "Get out." I kept my tone even, but my chest felt tight. "Ryan, I'm not helpless. I still drive. I still garden. I'm fine." He gave a little laugh, one of those fake polite ones, and said, "Yeah, of course. But, Mom and Dad have been talking, and they might move in around here soon. It could be good for everyone." Something in the way he said around here made my stomach drop. When he left that afternoon, he hugged me like he was saying goodbye to something, not someone. I watched his car disappear down the street, and for the first time in years, I locked the door behind him and just stood there, feeling a strange kind of dread settle in. I didn't know it yet, but that visit was the beginning of a fight I never thought I'd have to face, against my own family. 2 days after Ryan's visit, I woke up to the sound of someone knocking. Not a polite knock, that hard, impatient kind. I shuffled to the door in my robe, and there he was again, this time with a clipboard in his hand. "Morning, Aunt Carol," he said, cheerful like we hadn't had that strange conversation earlier in the week. "Just need you to look at a few papers." I frowned. "What kind of papers?" "Oh, just some maintenance stuff," he said quickly. "Mom and Dad thought we could help get the house in shape. Fix things up before winter." I stepped outside, crossed my arms. "Ryan, what are you talking about?" He sighed, that fake patient sound I remembered from when he was a teenager. "Look, Aunt Carol, I'll just be straight with you. This place is too much for you. You shouldn't be living alone anymore. It's not safe, it's not practical, and honestly," he gave a little shrug, "it's kind of a waste." "A waste." My heart started pounding. "A waste?" I repeated. He nodded, serious now. "Yeah, you've got this big house and all these rooms you don't even use. My parents could actually make use of this place. They've decided they're moving in next week." I just stared at him. For a second, I thought he was joking, some kind of awful, tasteless joke, but his face didn't change. "What do you mean they're moving in?" I said slowly. He smiled, like it was already decided. "You'll be better off in one of those senior communities, Aunt Carol. You'd have people to talk to, activities, help if you need it. This house isn't meant for someone your age." I felt something inside me break, not from anger at first, but disbelief. That's what it felt like when someone you loved suddenly stopped seeing you as a person. "You think you can just come here and decide that for me?" I asked quietly. He shifted his weight. "It's for your own good. And theirs, too. They already talked to someone about the deed. Apparently, there are ways to transfer ownership early. Makes it easier later on, you know? My hands started shaking. I could barely breathe. My own brother was trying to take my home, and he sent his son to do the dirty work. Get off my porch, Ryan, I said, my voice trembling but sharp. He blinked, surprised by the edge in my tone. Aunt Carol, don't be like that. You'll thank us when it's done now, I said. He finally stepped back, raising his hands like I'm just trying to help. Then he gave me one last look, a look that said he thought I was finished. When I closed the door, I slid down to the floor, shaking. My whole life, I'd been the one to help them. Birthday money, groceries when they were struggling, even the down payment on their first house. And now, this was how they repaid me. That night, I sat in the dark with a cup of tea I never drank, staring at the family photos on the wall. I kept thinking about my husband, how proud he was when we finished this house. His hands had built half of it. And then I made myself a promise. They might think I'm old, but I'm not stupid. I wasn't going anywhere. I didn't hear from Ryan for a few days after that, which gave me hope that maybe I'd scared him off. But then, on Sunday morning, I got a call from my brother Thomas. He didn't even say hello properly. Carol, we need to talk about the house, he said. My stomach turned. I could hear his wife, Denise, in the background, her voice sharp, talking fast, like she was feeding him lines. There's nothing to talk about, I said. Oh, there's plenty to talk about, he snapped. You're living alone in that big place and it's falling apart. You can't keep up with it anymore. Denise and I could move in, handle the upkeep, and make sure you're safe. You should be grateful. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Grateful? For you taking my home? Don't be dramatic, he said. It's family. You'll still have your room. We're not throwing you out. That word, your room, made my blood run cold. They'd already started thinking of my house like it was theirs. Thomas, I said quietly, this house isn't some spare property. It's my home. The deed is in my name. You know that he sighed like I was the unreasonable one. Look, Denise already talked to a realtor about getting the title updated. There are programs for elderly homeowners, ways to transfer property early. You wouldn't even have to worry about bills anymore. My hands were shaking again. You mean I wouldn't have to worry because I wouldn't own anything anymore? He went silent for a second. Then coldly he said, Ryan told me how rude you were to him. We're just trying to help you, but if you won't listen, we'll do what we have to do. That phrase, do what we have to do, echoed in my head long after he hung up. The next morning, I found an envelope in my mailbox. Inside was a printed letter, something they must have written up themselves, saying they were in the process of facilitating a property transition to ensure the long-term care and well-being of me. They'd even signed their names at the bottom, like it was some official document. I sat at my kitchen table staring at it, the paper trembling in my hand. That was the moment I realized they weren't bluffing. They were actually trying to take it. My brother, the same one I used to protect from bullies, the same one I helped get through college when our parents couldn't afford it, was now treating me like some obstacle in his way. That afternoon, I went through my file cabinet, digging out the house deed, the tax records, every legal document I had. I sat there until the sun went down, surrounded by papers, trying to make sense of what they could possibly do next. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound outside made me jump. The wind, a passing car, even the creak of the old floorboards. By Tuesday, Ryan was back, this time with his father. They didn't even bother knocking. I found them walking around the front yard, pointing at things, the fence, the flower beds, the roof, like they were already planning renovations. When I stepped outside, Thomas looked at me like I was a guest. We'll probably start with the porch, he said casually. I felt something inside me snap. Get off my property, I said, my voice shaking. Denise's voice piped up from the car. Don't make this harder than it has to be, Carol. We're doing this for you. I just turned and walked back inside before I said something I couldn't take back. Once the door closed, I sat on the couch, heart pounding, staring at my phone. For the first time in my life, I was scared of my own family. But I knew one thing for sure. They'd gone too far. And I already knew exactly who I was going to call. By the end of that week, I could barely recognize my own life. Every morning, I half expected to look out the window and see their moving truck parked out front. It was like waiting for an invasion. Then, that Saturday afternoon, it happened. I heard voices outside, familiar ones. When I opened the front door, there they were. My brother, his wife, and Ryan, all standing in my yard with boxes stacked in their trunk. I froze. Thomas smiled like it was perfectly normal. "We decided to get a head start on things," he said. "Didn't want to wait until next week?" My throat went dry. "A head start on what?" Denise answered for him, walking right past me up the front steps. "Moving in, Carol." You knew this was coming. She was wearing gardening gloves and carrying one of those plastic bins labeled kitchen. Ryan followed behind her, avoiding eye contact, carrying a lamp. "Stop," I said. My voice cracked, but I didn't move. "No one is moving in here." Thomas sighed like a man tired of repeating himself. "We've already decided. You can stay in the guest room until we sort out the legal stuff. We'll handle the rest." He brushed past me like I was invisible. That's when something in me just snapped. I slammed the door behind them and yelled, "Get out!" So loud my own voice echoed off the walls. "This is my home!" Thomas turned, eyes hard. "You're being ridiculous. You can't live here forever. You're not well, Carol." "Don't you dare!" I cut him off. "Don't you dare pretend this is about my health. You just want what I have." Denise rolled her eyes. "Oh, for God's sake, you've been living alone too long. You're paranoid. We're family. We're doing what's best for you." I could feel tears burning in my eyes. "What's best for me," I said quietly, "was a family that didn't see me as a burden." For a moment, the room went silent. Even Ryan stopped moving. I saw the guilt flicker on his face just for a second before he looked down. Thomas muttered something to Denise, then turned to me and said, "We'll be back with the papers. You can't stop this." Then they left, calm, like they hadn't just broken something sacred. When the door shut behind them, I leaned against it and felt my whole body trembling. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might faint. Every part of me wanted to scream, to call someone, to make it stop. But there was also this deep, growing anger, the kind of anger that comes when someone mistakes your kindness for weakness. I walked to my husband's old desk in the study and opened the drawer where we used to keep important numbers, insurance, the bank, and our lawyer's card. My hands hovered over the stack of business cards until I found it. It was a number I hadn't dialed in years, but I still remembered it by heart. I picked up the phone, looked at the door one more time, and whispered to myself, "They have no idea who they're dealing with." Then I made the call. My hand shook as I dialed the number, but by the second ring I heard a familiar voice, calm, steady, professional. "Hello, this is Mark Daniels." I hadn't spoken to him in years, not since my husband passed. Mark had been our family lawyer, the one who helped us finalize the house deed and handle my husband's estate. I took a deep breath. "Mark, it's Carol Thompson," I said, my voice thinner than I wanted it to be. "I think I'm in some kind of trouble." He didn't hesitate. "Carol, tell me what's going on." So I did. Everything. The visit from Ryan, the threats, the so-called documents, the boxes in my yard. I told him how my brother and his family were trying to claim the house and push me out, how they said they'd already talked to someone about transferring ownership. When I finished, there was a long silence on the line. Then Mark said very carefully, "Carol, they can't take your house." "Not legally. The deed is in your name alone, correct?" "Yes," I said, "always has been." "Then you have nothing to worry about. But we'll make sure of it. Do you still have your original paperwork?" "I do," I said, glancing at the stack of folders spread across my dining table. "Every page." "Good," he said. "Listen to me. Don't sign anything. If they show up again, don't let them inside. And if they try to threaten or harass you, call the police. But first, I want you to come by my office tomorrow. We'll go through everything together." When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. That night, I slept with the phone on my nightstand and the house deed under my pillow. Maybe that sounds foolish, but it helped me breathe. The next morning, I put on my best jacket, the one my husband used to say made me look like I meant business, and drove to Mark's office downtown. I hadn't been behind the wheel much lately, but my hands were steady. He met me at the door himself, gave me a reassuring smile, and we sat down with coffee and papers spread across his big oak desk. He looked over everything carefully, then said, "They can't do a thing without your consent. But we'll go one step further." He helped me file a property protection notice, something I didn't even know existed. It made it nearly impossible for anyone to tamper with the title or claim ownership without my explicit approval. Then, just to be safe, we drafted a cease and desist letter addressed to Thomas and Denise, warning them that any further attempts would be considered harassment and referred to law enforcement. Mark's tone was firm but kind. "You're not alone in this, Carol. You did the right thing calling me." When I left his office, I sat in the car for a while, watching people pass on the sidewalk, couples holding hands, a mother pushing a stroller, and I realized how small I'd been made to feel by my own family. How quickly they'd turned me into some fragile old woman in their minds. But I wasn't fragile. I was angry. And now I had the law on my side. 2 days later, the letter went out. I know because Thomas called that evening, furious. "What the hell is this?" he shouted. "You sent us a legal notice?" "To your own brother?" I stayed calm. "Yes, my own brother tried to take my house. Don't call me again unless it's through my lawyer." Then I hung up. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something close to peace. I didn't know what they'd do next. People like that never take no easily. But I wasn't afraid anymore, because I'd made one call, and that one call had changed everything. It took less than a week for everything to start unraveling. Not for me, but for them. After I sent that letter through Mark, I thought maybe they'd back off quietly, too proud to admit defeat. But no. A few days later, I saw Ryan's car parked at the end of my driveway again. He didn't get out this time, just sat there for a while, engine running, pretending to be on his phone. I ignored him. I'd already told Mark what to do if they came near me again, and I wasn't about to give them another inch. Then, the next morning, 2 officers came to my door. My heart jumped into my throat until one of them smiled and said, "Ms. Thompson, we just wanted to follow up on a report we received." "From who?" I asked. "Your nephew," one of them said. "He claimed you might be a danger to yourself, that you weren't capable of managing the property anymore." For a second, I couldn't even speak. They'd actually gone that far. But I stayed calm. I invited the officers inside, offered them coffee, and showed them my kitchen. Clean, organized, everything in its place. Then my bills, all paid on time. Then my medication list, neatly labeled. I could see it on their faces. They realized quickly what kind of people they were dealing with. After about 20 minutes, one of them closed his notebook and said gently, "Ma'am, you seem perfectly capable. I'm sorry to bother you. We just had to check when they left. I called Mark right away." He didn't sound surprised. "They're trying to build a case that you're incompetent," he said. "But now that the police have been here and found nothing wrong, that works against them. I'll make sure it's documented." That night, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea and finally let myself smile. Not a happy smile, but a knowing one. The kind you get when you realize your enemies just exposed themselves. 2 days later, I got a call from a mutual friend who worked at the county records office. She told me Thomas had actually tried to file preliminary paperwork to update ownership documentation, and it had been flagged because of the property protection notice Mark filed. They'd tried to sneak my house out from under me, and instead they triggered an investigation into possible fraud. It was poetic. Within a week, they got a formal letter from the county. I know because Denise called me that night, voice trembling, full of panic instead of confidence for once. "Carol, we didn't mean for things to go this far," she said. "This was supposed to be a family arrangement. Now they're saying we could get in trouble?" "You should get in trouble," I said. My voice was steady, cold. "You tried to steal from me." She started crying, saying it was all Ryan's idea, or that they just wanted to help, that they didn't realize it would look so bad. I didn't respond. I just listened until her words ran out. Then I said, "Denise, I hope you and my brother remember this the next time you decide what you're entitled to." And I hung up. After that, they went quiet. No visits, no calls, nothing. Word spread through the family, and I could tell from the silence that everyone knew what they'd done. It wasn't revenge I felt, it was relief. They thought they could bully an old woman. They forgot that I was the one who raised half of them, the one who'd worked 2 jobs when we were kids just to help keep our parents' house. They thought age meant weakness, and they learned otherwise. And just like that, the tables had turned. It's been 6 months since that day, and I still wake up some mornings expecting another knock on the door. Old habits, I guess. Fear has a way of lingering, even after you've won. But it's quiet now. Peaceful. My kind of peaceful. After everything that happened, I had Mark update my will and set up a legal trust for the house. Airtight this time. It can't be touched, transferred, or sold without the executor's approval. I made sure of it. I also gave copies of everything to a close friend, someone I trust like family, because blood doesn't mean what it used to. Thomas and Denise haven't spoken to me since the fraud investigation started. They were lucky it didn't go further. Mark told me the county settled it quietly, since no formal transfer had gone through, but the damage was done. Word got around, and their reputations took the hit. Ryan moved out of their house a few months later. I heard he got into some financial trouble of his own, which didn't surprise me one bit. You'd think I'd feel triumphant. I don't. Just tired. Family betrayal doesn't heal cleanly. It sits under the skin like a bruise that never fully fades. I keep thinking about every birthday dinner, every Christmas morning, every time I watched Ryan open the gifts I bought him as a child, and now I see him standing in my doorway, telling me I was too old for my own home. That's what hurts most, how quickly love can turn to entitlement. Still, I've learned to find small joys again. My garden's fuller than it's been in years. I fixed up the porch, the same one Thomas said he'd start with when he moved in. I painted it yellow just to make it mine again. On warm evenings, I sit out there with a glass of tea, listening to the crickets and watching the light fade behind the trees. A few weeks ago, a new family moved in across the street. The little girl, maybe 8 or 9, waves at me every morning on her way to school. Her mother brought me cookies the other day, chocolate chips still warm, and said, "It's nice to have a friendly face in the neighborhood." I smiled and said, "It's nice to still be here." And I meant it. I don't think I'll ever understand what drove my brother and his wife to do what they did. Greed, maybe. Fear of getting old themselves. Whatever it was, I hope they realize now that they can't just take what doesn't belong to them. Not from me, not from anyone. I still have the letter Mark sent them. It's in a drawer by my bed. Sometimes I look at it, not out of spite, but as a reminder. There comes a point in life when you have to stop letting people decide what you deserve. They thought I was weak because I was old. But I'm still standing in the same house my husband and I built with our own hands. And they're the ones who had to pack up and leave with nothing. That's peace to me, not revenge, just justice, quiet, steady, and earned.